Welcome to another episode of Media Industries, the talk show that brings the classroom to the industry and the industry to you. I'm Nicholas Boston. I'm a professor in the Department of Journalism and Media Studies at Lehman College of the City University of New York. Media Studies is one of the courses I teach. Students in the class who are learning about the corporate structures and business strategies in the media industries produce this talk show. They invite professionals from across the media industries of print, broadcast, and digital, as well as industries that intersect with media, such as fashion and music, to come on and discuss their jobs and the states of their industries. Students take this opportunity to apply the theoretical knowledge they're gaining in the classroom. This is our third season of Media Industries, the talk show. We have a lineup of 6 episodes, each bringing you an eye-opening conversation with a different professional who makes the media that capture our world. Media Industries is recorded in our state-of-the-art studio in the Multimedia Center at Lehman College and delivered to you here on BronxNet Television. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Media Industries.
Hello, my name is Hector Guzman, and I'm your host for this episode of the Media Industries Talk Show. We live in a digital age where information is accessible to us through many different platforms, exposing us to many different points of view. But have we ever taken the time to ask ourselves what goes into providing this information? What is it like on the other side? Well, we have brought on in some experts to enlighten us. We are pleased to have with us today Khary, Septh, and James Powell. James Powell is the arts and culture editor working alongside Khary, Septh, who is the co-founder and creative director of The 10th, an independent magazine which serves as a platform for the African-American LGBT community to show and share their creative ideas while shining a light on their experiences in society. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to have you guys here.
Thank you so much.
So can you guys tell me, how did the 10th magazine come about? Whose idea was it?
Well, about 4 years ago, a group of us who were all sort of working commercially in sort of arts and culture wound up coming together, probably over a bottle of wine or something a little bit harder, and saying how much we hated.
You thought about this while you guys
we
were
hated our lives.
tipsy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
And there comes a point, I think, in every commercial artist's career where they start to wonder if they're being used as a sort of hired gun or as a tool in some larger institution, and those things can become rather unfulfilling. So we thought to kind of play around and do not just a media project, but also a community building project in gay culture, LGBT culture.
So how did you convince James to jump on the same wagon as you?
Well,
Or every other?
Well, I'll let him speak for himself. How did you wind up on board?
Well, it's interesting. So I had been working with the Bill Hillary and Chelsea Clinton Foundation for 7.5 years. And so very different worlds.
Yes.
A lot more, corporate, nonprofit structure. But my really good friend who was living with at the time, Prentice Anderson, is our fashion editor. And he was like, you know what? You need to be a part of this publication because you're going to love it. And you've been looking for a community of other queer Black people, so here it is. And I remember at when we launched in 2014, I went to the opening party, and I just was like, how do I become a part of this? And that led to a partnership with Leslie Loman Lesbian Art Museum. We did.
How was that transition from working, like, it's two totally different worlds. How was that transition? Was it comfortable?
It's frightening.
Okay.
It's scary because you really have to rely on your own. You have to be confident, and you have to jump into your work and just know what you're doing. But I think it doesn't feel like work, and I think Khary will agree with me.
Right.
It's grueling, but because we're doing something that has a mission that I'm personally committed to as a gay Black person.
I'm relatable.
Yes, it's relatable, and I feel like every time I wake up every day, I'm helping to serve the larger community, so it doesn't feel like work.
So how many members are part of this
I mean, it's sort of a very organic thing. Each issue, now we're going on to issue number 5, but we work with about 100 to 150 LGBTQ people of color. Really, it's kind of expanded beyond simply being about sort of African American men. For example, we were chasing a story about technology last summer in the Valley, and it really wound up being a story where black lesbians who are really highly concentrated in Oakland and work often in Silicon Valley, and are kind of disruptors in that space, wound up being the story. So yeah, about 100 to 150 per issue, and maybe our core team is, I don't know, about 10 to 12 folks, and it really ranges from like our youngest intern is 19 years old and a prolific young writer, and then we've got contributors who are like our mentors, and you know, we're part of like other countries and artistic and literary movements back in the 80s.
And is it just African Americans or Hispanics are welcome?
Yeah, no, it's all sort of people of color.
This
right?
diaspora,
Okay.
it's the African diaspora. So, you know, that's a wide range of things. I mean, everything from people in North America to the Caribbean to, you know, Europe. We're all over. So anyone who's of African descent. But we also have recognized that there's great value in intersectionality.
Yeah.
This whole new phrase that's going on now. But we also try to find connections with other marginalized groups. So indigenous people,
The Asian,
the Asian
kids
community.
in San Francisco were an interesting conversation.
So how do you reach these people? Is it through social media, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
Well, you know, I think social media certainly serves its purpose, and I think in terms of, you know, making the initial points of contact, but what's really beautiful about our process, which is quite luxurious when you think about it, is that we get to spend about 4 months, 5 months a year on the road. So we'll, you know, go to a place, you know, meet the coolest queer people in that city and just kind of connect dots. And because we're there for so long and really there to sort of cover culture, to be immersed in it. So we were kind of in the punk scene last summer, and then we were sort of like in the leather scene the summer before, and then the geeks, and so we just spend time and actually get to sort of like deeply know a landscape, and it makes us better journalists. So there really is, it starts with social media, but it's really like kind of.
Yeah.
So do you guys feel like digitization of magazines has been progressive or detrimental for your?
That's a trick question, right? Because ultimately we are a print object. Well, we've started as a print object, and we've got a really cool distribution. I don't know, I think what we didn't know is that it's not necessarily a publishing, right? It's disappeared. Digitization has obviously taken over. The internet has become a thing, but there's a connoisseur that loves print. So I don't know that our audience for the book is necessarily, you know, gay people of color. I think there are people who really appreciate sort of print. So we have this distribution that's like at magazine shops and museum shops, and then it kind of becomes something else when it hits the streets, and that's where kind of our live events piece comes in. That's where our sort of artist colony comes in, and all of the time that we spend kind of like community building and like hanging out. So yeah, I think digital is interesting because here we are like having done the work to build the brand, and we're just about to go into the digital space after 3 years of doing this really analog thing.
That's kind of quick because
yeah.
like, things just shift like every year. It's like we have all this Instagram Live, Facebook Live, all this stuff. Do you guys show like any like behind the scenes or anything like that,
well,
or promote your get-togethers on Facebook or Instagram?
I mean, we use social media, but really I think it's more the kids who are like Instagram, social media, kind of like, so here it is, we're here to document culture. So for example, like our next cover boy is an Instagram star, but the conversation and the dialogue becomes, what does it mean to be a social media celebrity and inhabit this space, and how do you navigate that as a young, you know, black queer kid? And it's interesting because it came down to be a very political piece, right? So we don't just use social media, but I think we do a little bit more dissecting of technology and how we can use it. But of course, like, you know, we get on when we need to.
Yeah. So you, Khary, as being one of the founders of the 10th magazine, or the 10th zine, as you like to call it, and the editor-in-chief of the 10th magazine, inform the viewers of media ownership. What do you?
I think media ownership is beyond important, especially at this point in time, especially for people of color. I think that our narratives have far too long and often been controlled by the white gaze. A lot of it has to do with access, but I think now what you're finding with digital technology and podcasting and the proliferation of media and content everywhere is that we're starting to see Black stories, Latino stories, queer stories pop up on, 99% Invisible, which is a big podcast, or NPR. So it's even become more sort of imperative for us to take our stories and prevent our own history, because I think so often we don't really know much about our history. I mean, a little bit about what we've discovered upstate is actually an interesting anecdote.
I mean, just sort of going along with that thought, it's so empowering when someone has control of their own narrative and they bring a sensibility to it that someone who hasn't experienced that in their life or have other people that are directly connected to them, related to them. It's a totally different feel. But yes, we were just recently in the Hudson River Valley, which is a place that is a home to so many different narratives. I mean, it used to be a vice capital where there was a lot of prostitution and gambling through the mid-20th century, but it also was a home to American Romanticism. So the Hudson River Valley School, which was a collective of painters who painted these beautiful landscapes. And so we discovered Robert Duncanson, who was this Black landscape artist who never ever stepped foot into the Hudson River Valley, but he was inspired by that type of painting. We learned about Mabel Mercer, who is this Black cabaret singer who was British, and she was also queer. And so there's all these narratives that we just don't, everyone gets there. Everyone loves James Baldwin, everyone loves Bayard Rustin. Right. We can talk about, even, I don't even think Audre Lorde gets a lot of press or, or
There's
a lot of visibility.
For sure.
So many powerful lesbians of color who don't have their stories told. And so we are really committed to that. But in Hudson River Valley, we're just discovering so much. Yeah.
And so I can already tell you guys are risk takers. So what are
you have to be a risk taker.
Right, we're risk takers.
Sometimes
what are some
I'm so
nervous. What has been the biggest risk you guys have taken?
Throwing careers away to do this work. Seriously, I mean, you talk about media ownership, media is typically been funded by advertising and sponsorships, right? So you've got to, number one, convince people that you are a demographic that needs to be addressed. And here you are saying that here we are, the Black gay community, which really isn't as visible and present as we should be. We don't have metrics, we don't own bars, we don't own neighborhoods, we don't own things. So it's tough to kind of convince them to throw money, even though we're index high as consumers in technology, arts, and leisure. So, the ownership thing becomes challenging because you are literally out there sort of begging. But the risks are that, I was an art director and controlling huge budgets for luxury retailers and big fashion brands, and just sort of threw that away to see how much power we could squeeze out of our existences in this short time that we've got here.
So you guys have risked everything, your careers, your past careers, just to show the world. Just to show the world.
Sometimes even our physical our physical safety.
Oh, sure.
I mean, obviously being in a city like New York, it's progressive, right. And you get comfortable. You can walk down the streets for the most part holding hands with a person of the same sex and not really be harassed. But when you're in Alabama, when you're in the middle of even parts of rural upstate New York, where people are not really used to that as a norm, there's been times where people have said they're gonna point at guns.
Oh yeah, we do this wild.
All sorts of things.
Yes, for us.
And then Khary also is. He may not say it, but he's about getting the shot. And so we've been when we were out in Washington, Portland. We were outside of Portland in nature, where nature doesn't care about who you are or what publication you have. Khary's like, we got to get this shot, and he's hanging over a cliff, and I'm like, you're gonna kill yourself, but it's worth it in the end.
Well, yeah, I mean we've also did a piece in our Hollywood issue where we took all these, LA queer boys and did a gang story and rewrote Boys in the Hood, and come to find out that when they shoot videos in the hood, there's armies of security, and about 3 hours in, everybody gets sort of wind that we're moving around, but they're LA boys. Some of them leave, they get scared, cars pull up. It's been some pretty wild experiences. We've had guns drawn on us and all these things, but in a sense, I don't know. It just seems maybe the thrill of the journey of it all, but it's been tough.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I wouldn't know. I would walk out. I'll leave. Uber.
Right.
Yes,
Uber, exactly. Uber and mobile Alabama. Exactly.
So as we know, the media industries are heavily consumer-based. Right. How do you manage to stay creative while giving the public what they want? What is your creative process? Do you guys brainstorm, get together, or is it a separate thing? You come up with an idea and then let's meet up and put it together, or?
It's the energy of the kids that we surround ourselves with. And I mean, when I say kids, it's cross-generational again. So pretty much we are, in a studio, moving around a lot. The technology thing popped up because we had been spending so much time reimagining old text and, Du Bois and civil rights, Black Power, and all of those things that we were familiar with. But we were like, wait a minute, what about technology? And what are the new structures and systems that we'll be living in? So at that point, we just kind of throw the idea out to our collaborators and chase stories, but we stay creative because we stay connected. And that was another thing for me as sort of a gay man aging out of cocktail culture and bars. Well, how do you stay connected and have a sense of community and become a mentor and be able to teach, but then in the same sort of breath be inspired? So, I'm proud to say that our book has gotten, kids agents and major campaigns for hotel chains, not to mention, put books on shelves at Barnes and Nobles for kids and gotten them like mass visibility because we all come together to make this really beautiful thing that has these legs, but then we all get to use it to kind of jockey and create our own things outside of. So it's easy to say inspired.
So in the morning, what motivates you guys to do this? Because having a gun point to your face or standing over a cliff, it's crazy. But what motivates you to keep on doing it day to day?
You know what? It's actually sometimes there are surreal signs that you're like, all right, is this really happening? So while we were out, jumping off cliffs in Portland, we were driving. We were doing some scouting for locations for the location to shoot the next. We were looking for a place to shoot for the next day, and I was driving, which is, I'm like petrified of being on the road, and there was this rainstorm, so there's a big river on the side, and there's all these cliffs and like beautiful canyons. Everything's so beautiful out in the state, in Oregon. And when we were there, I missed the exit, obviously, and Khary's yelling at me like, we're gonna lose our light. And we see this big rainbow. Yeah. And so we take the exit and we actually—
Cross the rainbow?
We drove at the end of a rainbow. Who would have known? I thought that was just for cartoons.
No, really.
Yeah. And so we drove through this rainbow. We saw all these colors, and I thought we were dying at that point.
Alien abductions must feel like this.
And it was just this experience that was so, I don't know, it was otherworldly. And after we were done, we had to pull over to the side of the road and like kind of absorb what happened. And immediately after that, the next day, Pulse happened. And we knew some people who had, died in Pulse. And I think the rainbow and then, having this great tragedy, it sort of said to us, you need to continue to do the work, even as crazy as it is. And this rainbow, I know it sounds so ridiculous and crazy, but this rainbow has been following us. We were in Hudson.
With a leprechaun.
Yeah, could be, with a box of cereal, but like—
Or a check to make a road trip happen.
But we were, again, it was like we got caught in another rainstorm, and all of a sudden the rainbow comes out, and Khary gets this beautiful shot of the person that we were interviewing, and we're like, you know what? We can be stressed out, but at the end of the day, we're gonna be able to get through all of this because we get the phone calls and the emails of how much it's changed and shaped their lives. And I can't help but think about when I was, a teenager in Richmond, Virginia, and I had no outlet at all. There was no Instagram. I'm dating myself right now. There was like AOL in a chat room. You didn't have beautiful people of color in a print form. And so when people see that and they're inspired by it, that's what makes us keep doing the work. So yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you want to say something?
No, I was inspired by it, but then also like, a platform to show work, right?
Yeah.
It was this big struggle for so long. We all want to shoot and work for the titles, the IDs and the Dazed and all, the British Vogues, and all of a sudden you create this vehicle and it's sitting next to those books, right? And it's covered more heavily in the press, and we've got the same distribution and we shoot the same labels. then it becomes an important platform because so many of us don't have outlets or are not sort of being received in that world. So it's cool to have something that is separatist and is still playing in that game. So it's a feeling, it's a purpose, it's all those things.
So do you guys feel the pressure to keep up with constant trends that race within media productions and consumption? For instance, how do you adjust to platforms like Snapchat or Instagram?
We give them to the kids who command them. I mean, we just like, you want to take over our Snap? Like, we're in LA, you know what I mean? Like, we'd be like, Hector, just take over this Snapchat and turn it off.
Just Snap.
No, we actually just did.
And we did it take over on Instagram, and we gave one of our kids $10 a day. And this guy, Ricardo, which happens to be like a college grad, we were like, what can you do in $10 a day? And he just documented.
Just to record? That's a lot of money just to record.
Yeah, just to
I would have taken it. Oh, yes.
Yeah, right.
I would have been back tomorrow.
Maybe you should do the challenge.
Well, maybe you should take the challenge.
I would take it.
You're welcome.
$10 every day.
But it was cool.
It was
so cool.
It was cool because, again, like I don't see the world through that lens. So I think that's what Snapchat and digital media is supposed to do, is make you feel sort of connected to something or a brand or a person. So in our case, we just like pass it over. Yeah.
So since racial and sexual identity are fundamental elements of your magazine, in what ways has being a gay man of color contributed to your immediate success?
Oh gosh. I think I've been lucky just to have found a sort of purpose in a way. I don't know that success is always financial. I don't know if it comes in the form of statues and accolades, but I know that like waking up every morning and having like a sense of purpose, you know, is what makes it work. And then as a gay man of color, I mean, we're just blocked out of certain things, right? There are just spaces that we cannot exist in, and having like kind of ascended pretty high in a commercial space and traveled the world, and I, you know, worked for all of these famous celebrities and seen inside of these rooms, you know, you realize that you actually are kind of capped. So I think for me and for us, how far can we push the level of access so that, you know, you can come through and have the television show that you want to have, and there's a place and people understand what it means, and, you know, Hector does da-da-da-da-da and hangs out, you know, like that needs to be a thing. We need more and more and more, so we've just kind of got to prove that it can be done. So
I agree with that, and I also would just like to add, like, it really is, and pardon the cliche, it is a labor of love, and you have to, in order, I mean, we're serving our community in a sense, and so we're not a monolithic culture. We're not a monolith, and there's a lot of complexities. People don't always see eye to eye, not necessarily within our work, the people we're working with, but with the larger LGBTQ community. And you really have to be, you always have to make people feel comfortable, right? In order for them to really tell their story. So it's a big part of it, it's us being honest and you know, bending when it's not necessarily comfortable, and when in dealing with difficult people sometimes, even when you usually could just walk away, but when you like really, you have to love, you have to really love the people and love the work in order to get the story out. So that's, I think being a gay black man does add to that, because you know that all the things that, you know, I know alone personally I've had to experience coming out, you know, not talking to your parents for 8 months. You get that when someone comes into work or they're trying to give their best self, they're just trying to survive. And so we have to keep that in mind when we're doing the work. When we don't get things don't go our way, we still kind of have to say, okay, we're gonna work with this person because I know what you've been through, and I know what a tough day for you is not like a tough day for everybody else.
So how do you guys balance your work life and your, you know, your leisure times?
no such thing.
We're remarkably unsuccessful with
amazing.
that.
Okay.
But again, when you are, I mean, we do have like a social, oh God, it's hard to say. I mean, I would imagine
I can tell you guys just hang out all the time, like as friends, you know.
Well, I mean, but we're new friends through this platform, like so many of these guys and girls that we hang out with. I mean, we're like family in a way. So, you know, it's hard to say, do we have a social life? Well, if you, not really. I mean, social and work is the same thing right now.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And thank God, like, it is easy to get along. Period. But you're right. There is, but again, it doesn't feel like work. It really doesn't. I don't think I would want to be doing anything differently.
And it's interesting, like, I think some of my friends, when I'm a little bit older, they're upset with me, to be honest with you, right? So you have a social circle that you come out with and you wind up traveling with to all of the kind of circuit parties, pride events, and you shop and you have mimosas downtown and you selfie yourself to death. But like ultimately, when you're sort of mission-based, like we've become, you know, so many people have shown up for us to make this work happen.
Yeah.
So many people are on this list. If it's a choice between like hanging out with an old girlfriend or going to see a show or, you know, going to be like front row and center for Marcus's dance performance, like that's always going to win at this point. And I've had to do some explaining to my old friends, and I'm like, I have a responsibility to show up for the people who've shown up for us in a very real way. And sometimes your friends, you know, they'll show up for the kind of casual stuff, but they're not always, you know, there for the real.
And the problem is everybody, I mean, we are having fun, but we're doing work.
Right.
And so it's even with my, like with friends and family, they're like, well, but you're out at parties and you're having so much fun. I'm like, no, but we're casting, we're doing, we're working. And then after we go to that party, he's gonna ask me to write a script or write an article that's due tomorrow. So it's kind of like we are always doing that.
Right.
But yeah.
Great.
So just to speed up, what advice would you give college students like us, like when we're ready for the big world?
There's no good advice.
I would say there's really no good advice. I would say to follow like your passion. So much of what you will be able to accomplish is because you don't sort of know things as they're supposed to be done. You wind up like buying into rules and systems and ways of working after you've worked for a while. Certainly in corporate America, I would say that there are no rules, that you don't have to be trained to do something. You're so lucky to be here at Lehman and having this experience in media studies, but even if you didn't, you could still do the exact same thing. Don't be scared of anything.
We would like to stay here with you all. However, where can we find you on social media? Where can we go to see your work, to maybe be an intern?
Word. You can catch us online, Instagram at The 10th Zine.
Write it down.
The 10th Zine on Facebook as well. www.the10thmagazine.com is our website. And you can find us on every Barnes & Nobles, McNally Jackson, West 4th Street train station. We're all over kind of in distribution, but you can also just shoot us an email.
Yeah, that old-fashioned email.
And you know, we're an open platform. Every time we get an email and people are like, oh, we would love to, we're like, well, let's do something. So it's an open door policy.
So thank you, Khary. Thank you, James Powell, editors of the 10th Magazine, for sharing your insights and your professionalism with us. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching. And we want you to watch our other episodes of Media Industries. Please visit bronxnet.org. Thank you.